When I first moved into Willow Creek Estates, I thought I had found my sanctuary. After years of serving in Congress, I craved a quiet retreat, a place where I could heal away from the relentless scrutiny of the public eye. The neighborhood seemed perfect: tree-lined streets, well-kept lawns, and a sense of tranquility that promised peace. Most importantly, it had plenty of space for Max, my service dog and loyal companion, to roam and enjoy. But that peace was shattered the moment I received the first note from the Homeowners Association, HOA. It was a standard form letter, accusing me of an unauthorized pet violation. I chuckled at first, assuming it was a simple mistake. Max wasn't just a pet. He was a service animal, protected under federal law. I sent a polite response, explaining his role and providing the necessary documentation. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next day, I heard a sharp, grating voice outside my front door. "You must be the new neighbor breaking our rules," the woman said, her tone dripping with condescension. I opened the door to find Linda Harper, the self-appointed enforcer of the HOA, standing on my porch. She was a tall, wiry woman with a permanent scowl etched into her face. Her arms were crossed, and she glared at Max, who sat calmly by my side. "We don't allow large dogs here," she snapped, her eyes narrowing as she looked at Max. I kept my voice steady, though I could feel my patience wearing thin. "Max is a service animal. Federal law protects his right to be here." Linda didn't seem impressed. She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of Max. "We'll see about that," she said, her lips curling into a smirk. That night, I found the word "violation" spray-painted across my white picket fence. My security cameras had captured the entire act. Linda standing in the shadows, directing her teenage son as he defaced my property. I felt a surge of anger, but decided to bide my time. This was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, my mailbox was flooded with HOA letters. Each one contained a new accusation: fines for fabricated infractions, claims that Max was aggressive, and even warnings about my garden's non-regulation tomatoes. Linda had taken it upon herself to make my life a living hell. She posted flyers around the neighborhood, warning residents about dangerous animals, with a zoomed-in photo of Max yawning, his teeth circled in red. The smear campaign was relentless. The worst came one evening when I caught Linda's son, Jason, planting fake dog waste in my yard. I confronted Linda, but she simply smirked. "We're just documenting the truth," she said, her voice dripping with false innocence. Then, one night, I woke to the sound of rustling outside. I grabbed my robe and hurried to the window, only to find my entire garden destroyed. The plants were withered, their leaves blackened and crumbling. Someone had sprayed industrial-strength weed killer over everything. My security footage revealed the culprit: Linda's husband, Mark, sneaking onto my property under the cover of darkness. Enough was enough. I contacted my legal team and began gathering evidence. I knew Linda and her allies were planning something big. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, slipped me a note one afternoon. "They're planning an emergency HOA meeting to force you out," she whispered. "Be careful." I arrived at the meeting with Max by my side. The room was packed, and the tension was palpable. Linda immediately launched into a tirade. "That dog is aggressive. He's ruining our community," she shouted, pointing at Max. I remained calm. Pulling out my laptop, I projected my research onto the screen. "Actually, let's talk about property values," I said. The data showed that property values in Willow Creek Estates had increased since I moved in. The only decrease had occurred after Linda's unauthorized pool installation cracked her neighbor's foundation. I had receipts, satellite images, and legal documents to prove it. Linda's face turned red. "You can't record meetings," she sputtered. "Actually, state law allows it," I replied smoothly. Then, I turned my attention to the HOA president, Barbara Collins. "And while we're on the subject of rules, let's talk about your illegal fence extension onto public land, the same land you claimed Max was trespassing on." The room fell silent. Barbara's face went pale, and Linda looked like she was about to explode. "This isn't over," Linda hissed before storming out of the room. But I knew she wouldn't stop. And I was right. The next morning, I took Max out for his usual training exercises. As we walked through the neighborhood, I noticed Linda lurking nearby, her phone raised. "We need evidence of this nuisance," she muttered to her husband, Mark, who stood a few feet away. Then, Mark appeared, holding a gun. My blood ran cold. Think very carefully about what you're doing, I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. Max remained still, trained for moments like this. Before I could react, a car backfired down the street. Linda screamed, and Mark pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the air, and Max yelped, collapsing onto the grass. Blood pooled beneath him as I dropped to my knees, cradling him in my arms. Self-defense. The dog was attacking. Linda shrieked, but she hadn't counted on the neighbors recording everything. Police sirens filled the air as I pressed my emergency contact button. Sarah, I said, my voice shaking. They shot him. Linda's smug expression vanished as she realized who I was. Not just another homeowner, but Congressman James Sullivan. The footage went viral, and Linda's screeching about property values echoed on every news channel. Overnight, she became the face of HOA corruption. The FBI got involved, and years of HOA fraud unraveled. Misused funds, discriminatory fines, illegal property seizures. Residents came forward with horror stories of harassment and forced foreclosures. Barbara and Linda resigned in disgrace, and Mark was arrested for animal cruelty and illegal firearm use. The HOA dissolved within a month. Linda tried to sell her house, but no one wanted to buy from the woman who shot a congressman's service dog. She left town in shame, her reputation in ruins. As for Max, he survived. He walks with a limp now, but he's still my best friend. The war was over, and we won. But the scars, both physical and emotional, will always remain. Willow Creek Estates may have been my sanctuary once, but it became a battleground. And in the end, justice prevailed. In the months that followed, the neighborhood began to heal. New leadership was elected, and the HOA was restructured with transparency and fairness at its core. Residents who had once lived in fear of Linda's tyranny now felt empowered to speak out. The community came together, organizing events and fostering a sense of unity that had been missing for years. Max became a local hero. Children in the neighborhood would stop by to visit him, bringing treats and offering gentle pats. His limp was a constant reminder of the battle we had fought, but it also symbolized resilience and courage. As for me, I continued my work in Congress, but with a renewed sense of purpose. The experience at Willow Creek Estates had opened my eyes to the struggles faced by ordinary citizens at the hands of unchecked power. I became an advocate for HOA reform, pushing for legislation that would protect homeowners from abuse and ensure accountability. Linda's downfall served as a cautionary tale, a reminder that no one is above the law. And while the scars of that time will never fully fade, they serve as a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog. The Battle of Willow Creek Estates was over, but its legacy would live on, a story of justice, resilience, and the enduring power of truth. The aftermath of the HOA scandal in Willow Creek Estates had left the neighborhood in a state of uneasy calm. Linda Harper and her husband, Mark, had fled town in disgrace, their names forever tarnished by the viral footage of Max's shooting. The HOA had been dissolved, and a new, more transparent board had been elected. For a while, it seemed like peace had finally returned to the community. But peace, as I would soon learn, is often fragile. Max had recovered from his injuries, though he would always carry a slight limp as a reminder of that fateful day. He remained my constant companion, his unwavering loyalty a source of comfort as I navigated the complexities of life after the scandal. I had returned to my work in Congress, but the experience at Willow Creek Estates had changed me. I had become an advocate for HOA reform, pushing for legislation that would protect homeowners from abuse and ensure accountability. Yet, even as I worked to bring about change, I couldn't shake the feeling that the past wasn't entirely behind us. It started with a letter. One evening, as I sorted through my mail, I noticed an envelope with no return address. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the letters scrawled in a hurried, almost frantic manner. I opened it to find a single sheet of paper with a chilling message. You think you've won, but the game isn't over. The shadows are watching. I stared at the note, my heart pounding. Was this some kind of prank? A remnant of Linda's bitterness? Or was it something more sinister? I showed the letter to Max, who sniffed it cautiously before letting out a low growl. Even he seemed to sense that something was wrong. A few days later, I received a call from Mrs. Thompson, my elderly neighbor who had warned me about Linda's plans during the HOA meeting. Her voice trembled as she spoke. James, I saw her, she said. Linda. She's back in town. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Are you sure? Positive, Mrs. Thompson replied. I saw her driving through the neighborhood last night. She didn't stop, but she was here. I thanked her for the warning and hung up, my mind racing. Why would Linda return? She had left town in disgrace, her reputation in ruins. What could she possibly hope to gain by coming back? The next few weeks were tense. Strange things began happening around the neighborhood. Cars were vandalized, windows were broken, and anonymous threats were left on doorsteps. The new HOA board struggled to maintain order, but the sense of unease was palpable. Then, one night, I heard a noise outside my house. I grabbed a flashlight and went to investigate, Max close at my heels. As I stepped onto the porch, I saw a figure standing at the edge of my property. It was Linda. She looked different, thinner, more haggard, her once impeccable appearance replaced by a disheveled, almost wild demeanor. Her eyes burned with a mixture of anger and desperation. You ruined my life, she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. You took everything from me. I kept my distance, my hand resting on Max's collar. Linda, this isn't the way. If you need help. Help, she spat. You think I need your help? This isn't over, James. You'll pay for what you've done. Before I could respond, she turned and disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, I contacted the local police and filed a report about Linda's return. They promised to look into it, but without concrete evidence, there was little they could do. I also reached out to my legal team, who advised me to document everything and increase security around my property. As the days passed, the tension in the neighborhood grew. Residents were on edge, and the new HOA board struggled to maintain order. Then, one evening, I received a call from Barbara Collins, the former HOA president who had resigned in disgrace after the scandal. James, we need to talk, she said, her voice urgent. I know what Linda's planning. I met Barbara at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. She looked nervous, constantly glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. Linda's not working alone, she said, her voice low. She's teamed up with some unsavory characters. People who have a grudge against you. What kind of grudge? I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling I knew the answer. Barbara hesitated before continuing. You've been pushing for HOA reform in Congress, right? Well, there are people who don't want that to happen. Powerful people. They see you as a threat, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to stop you. I felt a chill run down my spine. Are you saying Linda's working with them? Barbara nodded. She's desperate, James. She's lost everything, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to get revenge. But it's not just about you. They're planning something bigger, something that could affect the entire neighborhood. The pieces were starting to come together. Linda's return, the vandalism, the threats, it was all part of a larger plan. I knew I had to act quickly, but I also knew I couldn't do it alone. I reached out to the FBI, providing them with the information Barbara had given me. They launched an investigation, and within days, they had uncovered a network of corruption that extended far beyond Willow Creek Estates. Linda and her allies were planning to sabotage the neighborhood, discredit the new HOA board, and derail my efforts at reform. The final confrontation took place on a cold, moonless night. The FBI had set up a sting operation, and I was there to provide testimony. Linda and her co-conspirators were caught red-handed, their plans foiled before they could do any real damage. As Linda was led away in handcuffs, she turned to me, her eyes filled with hatred. This isn't over, she snarled. You'll never be safe. I didn't respond. I knew her threats were empty. The shadows of the past had been exposed to the light, and there was no going back. With Linda and her allies behind bars, the neighborhood began to heal once more. The new HOA board worked tirelessly to restore trust and transparency, and the residents of Willow Creek Estates came together to rebuild their community. Max and I continued our daily walks, his limp a reminder of the battles we had fought and won. He remained my steadfast companion, his loyalty unwavering even in the face of danger. As for me, I returned to Congress with a renewed sense of purpose. The experience had taught me the importance of standing up for what's right, even in the face of overwhelming odds. I continued to push for HOA reform, determined to ensure that no one else would have to endure the kind of abuse we had faced. The Battle of Willow Creek Estates was over, but its legacy would live on, a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of justice, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog. Years later, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, Max by my side, I reflected on everything we had been through. The scars of the past would always remain, but they were a reminder of how far we had come. Willow Creek Estates had become a thriving, close-knit community, a place where neighbors looked out for one another and where the mistakes of the past had been replaced by a commitment to fairness and accountability. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I reached down to scratch Max behind the ears. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with the same unwavering loyalty that had carried us through the darkest of times. "We did it, buddy," I said softly. "We won." And as the first stars appeared in the night sky, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story on Store of Good Stories. If this story touched your heart or made you think, don't forget to hit like and share the video to spread this positive message to more people. And if this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of the meaningful stories we share every week. Your support is the biggest motivation for Store of Good Stories to keep bringing heartfelt and valuable stories to you. See you in the next video.